My name is Scarlett Martinez. I'm 33, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the adult everyone leaned on, the one who steadied the ship while others drifted in chaos. Thanksgiving was supposed to be warm, full of laughter and the smell of roasted turkey. But Max's birthday, that day started like it always did, with tension hiding behind forced smiles, the kind of tension that whispers, something's about to break. Max, my 9-year-old son, sat at the head of the table, his wide brown eyes shining with the thrill of birthday anticipation. He'd been dreaming about this moment for weeks, a simple wish for an iPhone tucked under the wrapping paper. I smiled at him, brushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. He deserves this day, I told myself, trying to quiet the echo of childhood memories, memories of my own father's cruel jokes, thinly veiled as lessons. The room buzzed as my father-in-law, Richard, cleared his throat, sliding a pristine white iPhone box across the table toward Max. "Only good boys get toys," he said, a smirk tugging at the corners of his lips. The family erupted in laughter, and my stomach sank. Max blinked at the box, his chubby fingers trembling as he peeled back the wrapping paper. "Is it really?" he whispered. "Open it and see, buddy," Richard said, his exaggerated cheer filling the room. "I should have known. I should have known." Max lifted the lid, and his smile froze. Inside lay a jagged, ugly rock. Just a rock. My heart clenched as I watched the confusion etch across his face. "Is this a joke?" he asked softly, his voice tight with disbelief. Richard leaned back in his chair, laughing so loudly it felt like it could pierce Max's fragile hope. "Well," he said, sipping his coffee, "only good boys get toys. Isn't that right, Max?" The laughter crescendoed. My sister-in-law cackled, wiping her eyes. My brother-in-law snorted into his drink. Even my mother-in-law shook her head with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. I didn't laugh. Max didn't laugh. He just stared at the rock, the warmth leaving his cheeks as his shoulders sank. I recognized that look. I had worn it at his age. The same hurt, the same betrayal, the same silent resignation. I swallowed, feeling a low burn ignite in my chest, a slow, simmering anger that had been building for years. No more. "Oh, come on," Richard waved a hand, pretending to soften. "It's just a bit of fun. Lighten up." My sister-in-law nudged Max with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "It's not like it's your real present," she chimed. My jaw clenched. There isn't a real present. This is it. The grand gesture, a rock in an iPhone box, and a punchline at my son's expense. "Wow," I said quietly, though the words trembled with barely contained rage. "You really outdid yourself this time." Richard shrugged as if this was normal, acceptable behavior. Maybe next year he'll learn some respect. Maybe next year. I glanced at Max again. His eyes were wet, his small hands gripping the edge of the chair, refusing to cry. I felt something boiling inside me, a protective fury, a fire I hadn't realized I carried. This wasn't just a joke. This was a lesson in humiliation, a reminder that power and fear were their entertainment. I stood slowly, the room quieting under the weight of my sudden movement. "You know," I said, my voice low, steady, "it's funny, and you've spent your whole life convincing people you're the strong one, the patriarch, the backbone of this family, but all you've ever been is a coward in a cardigan." The laughter died abruptly. My mother-in-law's eyes widened. My sister-in-law choked on her wine. Richard squinted at me like I had grown two heads. "Watch your mouth," he began. "No," I said, stepping closer. "You just humiliated my son in front of everyone, and for what? A laugh? A little moment to feel like a man again?" "I was joking, for God's sake, you—" "You weren't joking," I cut him off, my words sharp and deliberate. "You were performing, like always. Every time you find someone weaker, someone younger, someone who trusts you, you crush them with a smile on your face." Max's small hand gripped the side of his chair. I looked at him and then back at the family, my chest tight, voice trembling but unyielding. "You all saw it, every single one of you, and you laughed." Silence hung like a shroud. I smiled, but it was not kind. "You want to know what's really funny? I actually brought him an iPhone," I said, my hand gesturing subtly toward the garage. "The real one. It's in the car. I let you have your moment first. Thought maybe you'd act like a grandfather once in your life." Gasps rippled through the room. I turned toward my sister-in-law. "Emily, you laughed. You laughed like this was a comedy show. You, the therapist, you should know better." Her husband shifted uncomfortably. Always the neutral observer. but the tension was too thick even for him. My mother-in-law tried to intervene. "Can we not do this now? It's Max's birthday," she said, voice tight. "Exactly," I snapped, "and you all ruined it." I walked out without grabbing my coat, heading straight for the car. I pulled out the iPhone box and walked back in, handing it to Max. "This is for you, from me, because you are a good boy, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise." He blinked up at me, voice cracking on the word good. My heart nearly broke. Then I turned to the room. "You had your show. Now it's my turn." I dropped a manila envelope on the table. "What's this?" Richard asked, his tone sharp, suspicious. "The updated power of attorney paperwork," I said. "You're not on it anymore." "What are you talking about?" he stammered. "I'm talking about the house you co-signed on, the accounts you've been managing for Max's college fund. It's done. All of it. You can't just—" "I can, and I did," I said, calm, deadly. "Because you treated my son like this. Because you laughed at him, and you all watched." The room fell into stunned silence. I turned back to Max. He still clutched the iPhone in one hand, his other hand finding mine. "Can we go, Mom?" he asked softly. I nodded. "Almost," I said. Then I looked back at the family, ice in my veins. I'm not your punching bag. I'm not your backup wallet. I'm his mother, and that's the only title that matters here. The door closed behind us with a dull thud. Outside, under the gray sky, Max looked up at me. "I'm glad you're my mom," he said. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Me too, Max. Me too." Something had shifted, and this was only the beginning. The crisp autumn air did nothing to cool the fire still burning in my chest as Max and I drove back from the car. His small hand rested in mine, the weight of his trust pressing against my palm like a promise I couldn't break. The iPhone in his other hand gleamed innocently, oblivious to the storm that had just passed. Once home, I let Max start exploring his new phone while I slipped into the office. My mind raced. The humiliation wasn't enough. There was something more, something I had sensed for weeks but hadn't dared confirm. I opened my laptop and began digging into the family accounts connected to Max's college fund. The numbers jumped out at me like flashing lights in the dark. Withdrawals I hadn't authorized. Transactions labeled vaguely. Each one a breadcrumb tracing back to Emily, Evan's ex-girlfriend. My stomach dropped. $2,200 gone. Purloined under the guise of emergency expenses. For what? Therapy for some far-flung cause while she lounged on a Bali yoga retreat, posting selfies with captions about healing the inner child. I felt the familiar knot of fury tighten in my chest. Every fiber of me wanted to scream, but I knew that wouldn't solve anything. This wasn't about noise. This was about precision, evidence, proof. The family had laughed at my child once. Now it was time for them to feel the full weight of their recklessness. When the doorbell rang, I barely registered it. Emily strode in, a practiced smile plastered across her face, as if nothing were amiss. "Hey, Scarlett," she said lightly. "Just thought I'd check in. Max seemed really excited about his—" Her words faltered when she saw me standing by the desk. The manila folder opened. Documents splayed like evidence in a courtroom. Her smile flickered. "Emily," I said evenly, voice sharp enough to cut glass, "I think we need to have a serious conversation about some recent withdrawals from Max's college fund." Her eyes widened. I needed it for therapy expenses." "For your yoga retreat," I interrupted, holding up a printout of her Instagram post. "Paid for by my child's money. Don't lie. The teller remembers every word you said. I have screenshots, bank statements, even the signed authorization forged in my name. 2,200. Her posture stiffened. "It wasn't that much, Scarlett. Don't overreact." "Not that much?" I echoed, disbelief lacing my words. "You stole from my son. Don't stand there and act like this is a misunderstanding. You stole from my child." The room fell silent. Max peeked around the corner, his small eyes wide but trusting, still clutching his iPhone. I wanted him to see this, see what standing up for yourself truly meant. "You all laughed at him earlier today," I continued, turning to the room at large, my voice rising just enough to command attention. "You watched a child be humiliated, and you thought it was entertainment. Now you financially betrayed him too." Emily opened her mouth to protest, but I held up a hand. "No, you won't talk. Not yet. I need to make sure this is clear." I handed a copy of the documents to my mother-in-law, who recoiled as if I'd slapped her. "This is what happens when you allow cruelty to pass unchallenged," I said. "Every withdrawal, every forged signature, every laugh at a child's expense. It ends now." Richard, my father-in-law, turned pale. Scarlett, you can't. I can and I did, I said, my voice ice. You humiliated my son. You laughed at him. You watched and did nothing. Now I've collected the proof, and I'm not afraid to use it. This is your wake-up call. Max stepped closer, slipping his small hand into mine again. His gaze shifted from me to the family, a silent question. Mom, what now? I knelt beside him, keeping my voice gentle. Now, Max, we protect what's ours. We don't let anyone take what belongs to us, not in money, not in respect, not in love. They had their chance. I looked back at Emily. You thought you could manipulate a child's future for your own gain. That ends here. The college fund, the power of attorney, all of it. You are not entitled to anything that belongs to Max or me. Her face blanched. You can't do this. It's not fair. Fair? I repeated, my voice quiet but deadly. You laughed as a 9-year-old boy cried. You forged my signature. You are the one who lost the right to claim fairness. I'm not seeking revenge, Emily. I'm seeking justice, and this time, everyone will see it. Richard's jaw tightened, the first crack in his carefully maintained armor. My mother-in-law's eyes welled with tears, the kind that spoke more of shock than sympathy. Emily's husband looked at her, confused, the house's tension pressing on him like a vice. I didn't pause. You had your fun. Max had his moment. But justice doesn't wait for applause or forgiveness. It waits for the truth, and today, the truth has a voice. Max squeezed my hand, his small fingers reassuring me, grounding me. Mom, he whispered, can we go now? Yes, Max, I said, straightening, a flicker of relief passing over me. But first, one last thing. I reached into my bag and produced a small envelope, dropping it on the desk in front of Richard. He froze, eyes wide. What's this? He asked, voice tight. The updated legal documents, Yeren, I said. You're no longer on the accounts. You're no longer on anything that belongs to Max. And every penny misused? Accounted for. You've lost the right to pretend otherwise. A stunned silence hung over the room. Emily's lips parted, no words coming. Max looked up at me, curiosity and relief mixing in his wide eyes. I smiled faintly. This is how we protect family, I said softly. Not by cruelty, not by theft, not by pretending control, by standing up, by showing respect. And in that quiet, taut moment, I realized something. I wasn't just fighting for Max's future. I was reclaiming mine. The next battles were coming, but for the first time, I felt the fire of righteous certainty, the kind that could burn away generations of cruelty. The first move had been made, and the family would never forget it. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and faint anxiety. Scarlett Martinez, 33, sat tall in her navy blazer, her hands clasped on the table in front of her. Beside her, Max, now clutching his backpack, glanced nervously at the other side, where the family had assembled like actors in a drama he never auditioned for. Richard, her father-in-law, wore his best blazer, a mask of controlled calm over the unease curling at the edges. Emily, Evan's ex, attempted a practiced smile, but it faltered under the weight of Scarlett's presence. Even her mother-in-law, sunglasses perched on her face indoors, couldn't hide the tension. The first day began slowly, the judge calling the court to order and explaining the charges: fraud, identity theft, and misuse of a minor's personal information. Scarlett listened quietly as the lawyer representing the family attempted to frame it as a misunderstanding, a minor lapse in judgment. Mr. Turner, the lawyer said, voice honeyed, don't you think this has gone too far? Scarlett leaned forward, her voice clear, calm, and deliberate. You're right. It has gone too far. That's why I'm here. My son's name, his identity, his trust, used like currency by people who laughed at him in his own home. That's why I'm here. Gasps rippled through the courtroom, but Scarlett kept her gaze fixed on the family. Every whisper, every sideways glance, every twitch of discomfort was noted. She had prepared for this moment for weeks. Bank statements, forged documents, screenshots, audio recordings, surveillance footage from the bank. Everything. On day 2, her lawyer presented the financial evidence. Day 3, the teller testified about Emily's forged withdrawals. Day 4, surveillance footage showed Emily entering the bank, signing Scarlett's name, smiling as though committing a small, inconsequential crime. Scarlett watched Emily's face pale under the cold eye of truth. Your Honor, the teller confirmed. I remember Emily specifically. She smiled the entire time, saying she had authorization. Scarlett's internal pulse quickened. He's about to see everything, she thought. She glanced at Max. His small hand found hers under the table. He was calm, his trust in her unwavering. Then came Richard's turn. The court asked, Did you open credit cards using your grandson's information? He hesitated, a bead of sweat forming at his temple. I don't recall, he muttered, his voice shaky. Scarlett's lips pressed into a thin line. She had anticipated this. She pulled out her phone and pressed play on the recorded voicemail he'd left her just 3 weeks earlier. It's just some cards, for God's sake. He's a kid. He won't use them. What's the big deal? The courtroom fell silent. Even her mother-in-law's sunglasses couldn't hide the betrayal in her eyes. The judge's gavel tapped sharply. We'll proceed with the evidence. Emily tried to cry on the stand, her voice cracking as she pleaded for understanding. Scarlett remained seated, calm and immovable, her gaze locked on her son. Every attempt at manipulation failed. Every lie unraveled under scrutiny. And then, the final ruling came. The judge ordered, Emily must repay $2,200 to Max's college fund, plus fines. Richard is fined and placed under investigation for elder fraud and identity theft. Scarlett awarded $25,000 in damages, but more importantly, Max's credit is permanently protected. The courtroom felt hollow, yet victorious. Scarlett watched as the family's carefully curated facade crumbled in real time. Outside, Emily chased after them. You've destroyed this family. Do you realize what you've done? Scarlett stopped, her voice calm, controlled. No, you destroyed it. I just exposed the rubble. Max's small hand rested in hers. Are we done, Mom? He asked softly. Almost, Scarlett said, pulling him close. She had one last moment for him. A reward for courage. That night, they went to the Apple store. Max picked out AirPods, a case, the kind of small victory that mattered more than the objects themselves. It's not about the stuff, Mom, he whispered as they walked out, the neon lights of the store reflecting in his wide eyes. I know, Scarlett said, putting her arm around him. It's about respect. And in that moment, Scarlett understood something crucial. She hadn't just defended Max. She had broken a cycle that had haunted her own childhood, proving that love, respect, and justice were more powerful than fear, control, and manipulation. But even as the courtroom battle ended, Scarlett felt it. The quiet tension, the flickers of unresolved resentment. The story wasn't fully over. The war might have been won, but the battlefield of family and the lessons Max would carry with him was still unfolding. The courtroom victory should have felt like a release, but as Scarlett and Max stepped out into the gray autumn light, she realized something. Victory didn't erase years of cruelty. It didn't undo the laughter at Max's expense, the subtle manipulations, or the way her son had learned early on that family could be dangerous. Max climbed into the passenger seat, his new AirPods snug in his small ears, his face thoughtful. Mom, he said, voice soft, do you think they'll ever change? Scarlett hesitated, gripping the steering wheel, her eyes fixed on the empty street ahead. Some people never do, Max, but that doesn't mean we stop trying, and it doesn't mean we let them hurt us again. The first signs of fallout arrived that evening. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Texts from Evan's family, emails from lawyers, and one call she didn't answer from her mother-in-law. They were frantic, panicked, scrambling to reclaim some semblance of control. Scarlett ignored them. For the first time, she wasn't responsible for their sense of propriety. A week later, her mother-in-law left a voicemail. Scarlett, please, let's fix this internally. Family doesn't go to court over mistakes. Your father, he's not well. Scarlett didn't call back. Instead, she focused on Max. Every morning, they built a routine together. Breakfast, school drop-offs, homework sessions, evening reading. She opened a new college fund with layers of security, unreachable by outsiders. She taught Max about money, about boundaries, about how to protect himself, not just in dollars, but in spirit. Yet the past had a way of sneaking back in. One morning, her phone flashed with an unknown number. Curious, or maybe seeking closure, she swiped to answer. Scarlett, a frail voice whispered, I didn't plan to call, but I can't sleep. I think about it, about what I did, about Max, the rock, everything. I thought I was being funny. I see now. I was cruel. It was Richard. her father-in-law. His voice trembled, not with anger, but with the weight of regret. Scarlett's grip on the phone tightened. She wanted to yell, to cry, to forgive, but she knew better. "You had your chance," she said quietly. "Actions speak louder than words. Don't make promises you're not ready to keep." A week later, she visited the old neighborhood, the strip mall, where Max's birthday humiliation had unfolded. Across the parking lot, she saw them. Richard in a wheelchair, her mother-in-law beside him, and Emily handing out flyers for a family fundraiser. Emily noticed her first, jogging over with a hesitant smile. "You came," she said. Scarlett shook her head, her eyes scanning Max in the passenger seat. "We were wrong, all of us. But that doesn't make it right." Emily blinked. "It's not about the money." "Then why does your flyer have a QR code and not an apology?" Scarlett asked, voice sharp. Emily didn't respond. She simply lowered her gaze. Max didn't even wave back when Emily raised her hand. He didn't blink. He looked at her like she was just another stranger in the crowd. And in that moment, Scarlett realized the truth. Max had learned faster than she ever had. He knew how to protect himself. He knew who to trust. As they drove away, the gray sky pressing down on the strip mall, Scarlett felt a quiet, resolute satisfaction. She hadn't just defended her son. She had shown him how to stand tall in the face of betrayal, how to claim dignity when others sought to strip it away. That night, in their small living room with popcorn and a movie, Max leaned against her shoulder. "Do you miss them, Mom?" Scarlett smiled faintly, feeling the weight of years lift from her chest. "I miss who they could have been," she said softly, "but I'm glad I've got you. That's all that matters." For the first time in her life, Scarlett didn't feel like the failure, the disappointment, or the powerless observer of cruelty. She was the mother who showed up, the protector who drew the line, the force of love that refused to bend to manipulation. And as Max rested his head on her shoulder, she knew. They weren't rebuilding a family, they were building a new life. One forged from respect, trust, and the lessons of hard-won justice. 3 months had passed since the courtroom drama. The city streets glistened with winter rain, the kind that washes away dust but leaves everything else unchanged. Scarlett Martinez, 33, walked beside Max through the quiet park near their apartment, the crisp air carrying the faint scent of pine and wet pavement. Max's laughter, high and unrestrained, filled the space between them like music. It had been calm for the first time in years. Scarlett had finally allowed herself to breathe. Max thrived under routines that were simple yet grounding. Reading together, practicing Aikido, quiet weekends of cooking and homework. The tension that had haunted his small shoulders, the same tension she had carried through her own childhood, was gone, replaced with ease and laughter. Then, unexpectedly, a notification pinged on her phone, an email from a local newspaper. Longtime councilman Richard Turner, hospitalized after cardiac complications. Family now struggling financially after recent legal issues. The piece included a GoFundMe link. Scarlett scrolled past, noting that Emily had donated $10. A flicker of something, pity, guilt, or performative redemption, passed through her chest. She ignored it. She glanced at Max, who was perched on the park bench, sketching in his notebook. "Mom," he asked, without looking up, "why do some people never learn?" Scarlett took a deep breath, kneeling beside him. "Because some people only change when the consequences are real, and sometimes they don't change at all." She brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. "But that's not our problem anymore. We focus on what we can control." Weeks later, Scarlett visited the old neighborhood, drawn by curiosity or perhaps the need for closure. Across the parking lot, she saw Richard in a wheelchair, his frailty now undeniable. Emily handed out flyers for a family fundraiser. Her mother-in-law hovered nearby, anxious. Scarlett stayed in the car, watching quietly. Emily spotted her and jogged over. "You came," she said. Scarlett shook her head. "We were wrong, all of us. But being wrong doesn't mean it's fixed." Her voice was calm, but the authority behind it silenced Emily. Max in the passenger seat did not wave back. His eyes tracked Emily as if she were a stranger. He understood something Scarlett had only recently accepted. The past didn't define you. Your actions now did. As they drove away, Scarlett glanced in the rearview mirror. Richard's hand reached out, a feeble attempt to reclaim a past that was gone, but she had already moved forward, and so had Max. That night, in the warmth of their small living room, they watched a movie with bowls of popcorn between them. "Do you miss them, Mom?" Max asked softly. "I miss who they could have been," Scarlett said, her voice reflective but steady. "But I'm glad I have you. That's all that matters." Max leaned against her shoulder. "Me too," he whispered. Scarlett felt a lump in her throat, but it was not from sorrow. It was relief. Relief that she had broken the cycle of manipulation, the silent cruelty she had endured as a child, and protected her son from becoming the next victim. They weren't rebuilding the old family. They were building something stronger, a life forged from respect, trust, and boundaries that could never be crossed again. Scarlett had finally claimed her role, not as a passive observer of cruelty, but as the protector, the anchor, the parent who stood firm when it mattered most. Outside, the city lights shimmered in the rain. Inside, laughter and love filled the room, untainted by the past. And for the first time, Scarlett felt the quiet, undeniable truth. She had not lost her family. She had built a new one,